Lesson. Okay, so just a bit of a recap. We were looking into interpolation, extrapolation. So this is when you make a prediction, if it's in the range or outside the range. One thing I forgot to mention was when you actually do these questions, if a question says, "All right, make a prediction," all right, and then tell me whether it's reliable or not, you'd have to write reliable. So if it's interpolation, okay, reliable because interpolation. Okay, you actually have to write this in your year 11. Mainly because when it comes to interpreting all this stuff, okay, they like it when you write sentences. Okay, so you have to say reliable because interpolation. The other option is not reliable, and why do you think that is, guys? Because extrapolation. Yeah, so you actually have to write this. Yes.
If it's a 2 mark question, then you just put like the interpolation and shit. Do you get 1 mark? Or
Yeah. So if it's a 2 mark question and you've just done the working out like this, you probably will only get 1 mark because they want you to write this. And this isn't something that your teachers come up with. It's actually what VCAR wants you to do. Okay, so when you do your year 11 or year 12 exams, that's what they would expect you to write. Okay, so I know in year 11 your marks, your exams don't get checked by VCAR. We do it, but we want to train you up ready for it. Right, so make sure you understand that you have to write these sentences when you do it. And the reason why I say that is because you'll be expected to do the same here when you're interpreting the regression line. So the line of, say, the least squares regression line, we're going to interpret that. As in, we're going to try and explain what's happening in that formula. Okay? Right, so we already know what this means, yeah, guys? A plus bx. Can anyone tell me what the letters mean? What are the two main letters that we look for?
A is the y-intercept.
Yep.
And B is the slope.
So, good. So A is the y-intercept, and B is the slope or gradient. Okay, those are the two things that we actually just need to look into understanding when we do interpreting of the regression line. So there's also actual definitions there. Slope predicts the change of the RV or the Y variable over 1 unit increase or decrease. Okay, this looks a little bit crazy, but don't worry too much about it. It's just saying B is the slope, so the gradient. Okay, every time you increase the x by 1, so every time you increase x variable by 1, you're going to affect obviously what happens to the gradient. Okay. Another thing to note is the A or the y-intercept predicts the value of the RV when the EV equals 0. So what that's saying is on a graph like this. So if you have that, here is your y-intercept, right here. This spot right there. And that you can see is when your x is 0, that's what your y-intercept is going to be right there. Okay, that's all that's saying. So your y-intercept is basically where the line hits your y-axis, right there. Okay. So when it comes to interpretation, there's only two things that you really need to know. Okay, two sentences that I like you guys to use. Now, I'm not sure if I put it here, but you're going to use two different sentences. It's not here, so I'm just going to write it. So this is what you're going to have to write, guys. Two sentences. So we'll go interpreting X. Or interpreting gradient or the slope. Okay, this is what so this is the actual formula or the sentence that you have to use. So you'd say for every increase of 1 in the, okay, so this is what you would write, yeah, for every increase of 1 in the EV, whatever the EV might be. So it depends on what your graph or what your actual variables are. So this is how you interpret the gradient. For every increase of 1 in the EV, there is an increase of, and then whatever the slope is. Whatever that value might be. Okay, so for every increase of 1 in the EV, there is an increase of slope, grad, whatever the value is, and then you can say in the RV. Okay, Now let's actually put this in practice because you might be a bit confused as to what that means. Let's look at our formula back here. Weight. Yeah, I'll use this one. So let's use this one as my example. Okay, so I'll put this here for you guys. So here's my formula, right? And we need to interpret what this is saying. So if I wanted to interpret this based on the sentence that I just wrote, I would write for every, let's go blue, increase by 1 in the, okay, what's my EV here? Anyone want to tell me? What's the EV for this? Height. So height is EV, weight should be RV. So in the height, okay, there is an increase of, and what's the gradient here? What's the gradient or slope? Anyone want to tell me? 0.6 of 0.6 in the RV. Oh, whoops, in the weight. Okay, so that's what you would write in this sentence. Yes. Yep. Okay, so you got to write this. I would like you guys to please write this because this is the format that you have to write your answers in. So for every increase of 1 in the EV, whatever the EV might be, there is an increase of whatever the slope is in the RV. So please write down that sentence. So this is for interpreting the gradient or the slope gradient. Same thing. So write down that sentence, please. You will need to use it. And you don't have to get really fancy with these sentences. If you just use the format, I'm happy with that. Okay. Alright, so that's for interpreting the slope. The other one you need to interpret is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept. So when you do the y-intercept, this is what I normally do when the EV, so whatever the EV is 0. Okay, so when the EV is 0, the value, or you can write the RV, so what's the value of the, whatever the RV is, and then here you'll tell me what's the y-intercept. Okay, that's basically all it is for the y-intercept. So when the EV is 0, the RV is whatever the y-intercept value might be. Let me just rewrite that so it's cleaner. Y. Alright, so that's how we interpret both of them. So let's actually put that in context. When the EV, okay, so whatever your explanatory variable or your independent variable might be is going to be 0. The response variable or the dependent variable is going to be whatever the y-intercept is going to be. So putting that into context here, if the, okay, so let's look at the EV. If the height is 0, the weight, okay, so if the height is 0, the weight is, and what's the y-intercept there? -40 there. Okay, so -40. And that's how we'd interpret it. So going back to what you're changing, you're just changing the EV, what's the RV, and then what's the y-intercept. And then for the, if you're interpreting the formula for the gradient, okay, you're just changing what's the EV, what is the actual value of the gradient, and then what's the RV. Okay, so that's how we put that to practice. So these are the formats of the sentences that you should use I'll go back here. You should use these sentences when you're going to interpret your gradient or your slope and then your y-intercept. All right, I'll put that back there. Joseph, did you write these down? Make sure you write them. Yep, make sure you write them down. These things. When the EV is 0, the RV is whatever the y-intercept might be. Sorry, we're here. Yep.
Interpreting what? Interpreting what?
So I've written it here. So in the blue, you're interpreting the gradient slope, and in the red, you're interpreting the y-intercept. And I've just underlined the things that you're going to change for the sentences. Alright, so let's go to the next part. Let's actually put some of this into practice. Here you have your formula. Okay, Mark equals 30.8 plus 1.62 times time. Part A. Okay, write down the value of the y-intercept. So what's the y-intercept, guys?
30.9.
Good. Equals 30.8. And then let's interpret that. So how do we interpret that? What will we write? Tell me. Anyone want to tell me? Just blurt it out. If the what? What am I changing here? EV, which is
0.
time, is 0.
0. The
The
RV, which is Mark.
Mark
Y-intercept.
is, what's the y-intercept? 30.8. Good. Easy.
Mr. Mark.
Shh. Okay, and in part B. Okay, so what is the gradient or the slope here? Let's use another color. Right, shh. Alright, Bobby, what's the gradient for this one? Look at the formula. Up here. Up here.
Oh, 1.62.
Good. Alright, so the gradient is 1.62, and how do I interpret that? For every, so what would I say?
For every increase of 1.
Increase of 1 in the what?
In the EV.
In that, which is? What's my EV? In time. So in time. Yep. What's the rest? There is
an increase of 1.62
good
in Mark.
in Mark. Oh, in the marks. Go with the marks. So those are the two ways that we have to interpret our our y-intercept and our gradient. So it's really important that you just know what the values are and then how to interpret them. That's really all we're doing for chapter 7H. Interpreting those values. And you have to make sure, that you actually write it out like this. If you just write if you write Mark is if you just write y-intercept is 30.8, that would only get you like half a mark. Okay, but if you wrote the whole sentence, I will give you full marks. Alright, are there any questions with that, guys? No questions? Alright, so that's basically it.